Hey everyone, welcome to the Wednesday live stream. Wow. So you'll notice that it's just me today.
That's right.
Jay is not here. Jay has some kind of an intestinal virus situation going on. He said, so Steve, what do you think? Should I come over?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only having a loose stool about every half an hour. I do not come anywhere near my house with that deadly virus. So he is recovering at home. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ian.
That's right.
Do have some good news in that Bob may be able to. Yeah, his schedule is, he has had an involuntary change in his work schedule, meaning he got shit canned. His job was eliminated.
Yeah.
Companies outsourcing the UK or whatever. They moved over to UK. So he is going to be for now. He's available for the Wednesday live stream.
That's right.
So we'll have him start to join us.
This week in Bob.
That's right.
Or science. There are some interesting science things that we could talk about, but let's bring up some topics while we're thinking about it. Beginning music. Here we are. Who has heard of The Fog?
The Fog.
Anybody
in
the
chat?
Movie.
Movie.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't a good movie. It was a movie.
Wasn't that the one with the ending was like,
yeah, it was all right.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, The Fog, if anybody has heard of that. WWJLPD. Can you guess, chat, anybody what that means? Or WWCKD. You guys should know
What
it.
would something?
Yeah, what would something do? Or what would something
JLP?
JLP. CK.
I know what JPL is. I don't know the JLP.
No, unless I wrote it wrong. No. You should know it. Raw Milk. The Mist. Oh, The Mist was the movie.
There was The Mist.
Was The Fog
There was
also
yes, there was two different movies. There was The Mist and there was The Fog.
That's right.
In both movies, there was bad stuff.
That's right.
In The Mist / Fog.
Then AI misinfo, and then we'll get some TikToks. Okay,
yeah.
We'll stop with it. So, and we have some fun stuff, like since, New Year's just happened upon us, we found this thing. Let me, I don't even remember what buttons do what. Oh, that one is a little upside down. Here we go.
The South Pole.
So when do you ring in the new year? When you're in all 24 time zones at once. Technically, at the South Pole, we can choose any time zone we want. The sun is up 24 hours a day, so day or night doesn't really play a role. But South Pole Station uses the New Zealand time zone to be consistent with McMurdo and Christchurch, where we get all of our supplies. So New Zealand is one of the first to celebrate the new year anyway, but if we don't like how our year started, we just take a few steps counterclockwise around the pole, and we're back in 2024.
Pretty cool. Cool little artifact, but that's fun to know, right? I think Jay reported on that a while ago, that it's New Zealand time zone.
Yeah, right. It's technically the New Zealand time
yeah,
zone.
just for simplicity.
Got to pick one.
Yeah, exactly.
So that reminds me of the recent experiment, where they brought some flat earthers to the South Pole.
Yes.
To
We
see
didn't get
for
to talk about
themselves
that.
that the sun is literally above the horizon for 24 hours, which is
That's what they want you to think.
non-possible on a flat Earth model.
Impossible.
Yeah, so most models, like the
Funky.
North Pole is the middle, and the South Pole is like a rim around the outside of the flat Earth. So if you're at any place on the South Pole, at any time of year, the sun, that's when the sun should. You're at the, that's at the edge of the Earth. The sun should be the farthest away from you at some point during the day, right? When the sun's on the other side of the flat Earth.
Right.
It's impossible to have the model work so that you see the sun going around you. That only works on a globe Earth. So
Globers.
not that facts or direct observation or anything like
No,
that matters to people who believe that the Earth is flat.
Come on, that's silly.
Yeah.
But it does seem like they changed their mind, right? Didn't they?
The people who were there initially, that's what I understand.
Yeah.
But sometimes the rationalization, the motivated reasoning takes a little time. They need to have to let it simmer for a few days or a few weeks until they come up with some kind of cockamamie way to justify reverting to their original beliefs. If you ever saw the movie Behind the Curve, I believe that was what it was called, Behind the Curve. There's a lot of examples of that in there. So similarly, flat earthers obtained a device that measures the movement of the Earth, right?
Right.
Like a pendulum type of thing. Yeah. And they said, well, since the Earth is not a spinning ball, this should not move. Right, this shouldn't. It's like the pendulum. You've seen them on the museum. They slowly rotate every 24 hours.
Right,
it's like one of the first ways that we proved that the Earth is actually rotating. And so they did the experiment, and they showed that the Earth is in fact spinning around once a day.
Whoops.
And so they were like, oh, okay, well that is not the result that we were expecting. So then they said, okay. That just means no. It's just the stars are moving around the Earth, and they're dragging it with it, right? So it's the movement of the stars you see that's actually doing it, even though that makes no sense whatsoever. But
that's a lot for stars to do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're dragging us too, or something like that. That's interesting.
Right.
Foucault pendulum.
Yeah, the Foucault pendulum.
Somebody said it. Let me just click back. Somebody had gotten the correct answer in terms of the WWCKD. Attaboy, Jean-Luc Picard and Captain Kirk. So that's what we'll talk about in a little bit. So I know,
got it.
Just a little intro to that. Let's see. We do have some other fun ones before we get onto the TikToks. This is a fun perception one, which is kind of goes in line with those pesky flat earthers that always say, it's just perception.
It's just perception.
Watch this.
Please tell me what this is called.
I got you.
Watch this
This
building.
is Dr. Blitz responding to it, so go watch him. He's pretty dope. We've responded to him, but I wanted to get the first part, which is really interesting.
See how I back away and it's getting bigger? What is going on? And
So this is an example.
He goes into the specifics of it, but that's kind of a fun little perception if you trick your mind. If you
watch this building right here.
Watch the building relative to the window, it looks like the building is growing, sort of.
Form of parallax?
Yeah, I think so. And what Dr. Blitz says is that because the window is shrinking, it's like a % difference because of the distance you are from the window versus the distance to the building. So the building is actually not changing in
that much
percentage.
Yeah, but the window is.
So your perception is like, oh, it's growing, but it's not.
It's just not shrinking as fast relative to the window.
So it's kind of fun, that little... If you focus on the building, it does look like it.
See how I back
I'll do it one
away?
more time. Yeah, I'll just mute it. It's like, oh, the building's getting closer, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's a fun little
so
perceptual
that's a pretty
trick.
obvious one.
But isn't that how the moon and the sun and the flat earth and the yada yada? I don't know. They're trying to, I feel like they do that as well, where they're like, it's all your perception.
Perspective.
Perspective, sorry. Not
Yeah.
perception, but perspective.
It's all perspective. Can you explain to me exactly how that works?
Yeah.
No, it's just a vague hand way. It's
Yeah,
perspective.
it's
Yeah.
perspective.
It's all gremlins.
So there was another thing that I had found, the raw milk. Now, raw milk is getting some popular press today from a couple people in the incoming administration, it seems like. Do you have any thoughts on raw milk?
I have quite a few thoughts.
Quite a few.
I mean, yeah, we've been writing about that on science-based medicine for a while.
Mhm.
It's completely nonsensical, right? Pasteurization works. It kills bugs in the milk. It is completely safe. It does not harm the milk, or it has an insignificant effect on its taste or nutritional quality or whatever.
Yeah.
And whatever. Some people think, oh, I'd like the taste of raw milk. Good for you. Who cares? The thing is, it kills the bugs in there, and without it, you run the risk of getting infections.
Right.
Now, this is more acute because of bird flu. One of the main ways that bird flu is transmitting from animals to humans is through cow's milk.
Oh, wow.
So that, so raw milk now has this additional risk, of getting the bird flu. And of course that's not good, because every time that happens, it increases the probability that there'll be a mutation that will cause it to jump, basically to a human spread, which is fairly likely to happen at some point. So raw,
It's like one gene away, is that what?
there's one, the recent study we talked about on the show is there's one mutation away from probably being able to do human-to-human spread. It has a relatively low affinity. It can infect humans, but you need fairly high titers, high exposure to get a human infected. So you can get it from close contact with an animal or an animal product like raw milk, where there's very large number of virus in there. But in a human, it doesn't replicate that robustly, because, again, it's not adapted really for humans. So it can cause an infection. It can cause a serious infection. It could actually even kill people. But it's not. It doesn't exist in enough numbers that it's likely to jump from one person to another. But if it mutates so that it's a little bit better, adapted to infecting people, then eventually it crosses that line where it can jump from person to person. It is reproducing enough to do that. And a recent study showed, in the past, we're like, we're 2 or 3 mutations away from this happening. Now they're like, nope, we're just one away.
Yeah.
And it can do that.
So it seems like not a good time to be messing with that.
Not a good time to be messing with
So
raw milk.
this
It's
is-
never a good time. Now it's an even worse time.
So, I mean, there's some question about like the raw milk cheese or not pasteurized cheese, because that seems to still be for sale in the supermarkets, even in America. I mean, I think pregnant women are often told not to eat, unpasteurized.
Yeah.
But I think what Olivia brings up, and I have a video also to go with it, is that like anyone else grew up on the farm in the 80s, drank milk directly from the cows, and just surprised how the heck we're all still alive. It's like there is something to the rarity of you getting sick, but also times 100 million people.
Yeah, it's like any public health measure, right? You have to look at it in a few different ways. You can look at it as the percentage risk, right? As the relative risk, for example. You could also look at it in terms of the absolute risk, and oftentimes those numbers can be, well, it depends on where you are. Like the absolute risk could be very low. Like it could be, like you have a 1% chance of getting a serious infection, and it goes down to a 0.5%. So you have your risk. The relative risk sounds like a big change. The absolute risk is little. But as you say, if you're dealing with 300 million people, then even low absolute numbers do translate into an absolute big number of people. So it's the same thing. If you look at the number of people who have gotten seriously ill from raw milk over the years, it's a small percentage, but it's a lot of people.
Right.
And of course, that number would be, if the number of people drinking raw milk were orders of magnitude higher, that number would be orders of magnitude higher. And especially when you're talking about anything that has the potential for causing death, even very small numbers matter. Right? Even if it's like, 100 people died. That's a lot of people.
And like,
when death is the outcome.
Maybe adults have a little bit of a stronger immune system, but like children certainly don't, you would think.
Yeah. Like everything, if you're old, very old or very young, you're going to be more susceptible to infection.
Yeah.
But
so the reason I bring that up is because there was a video and a debate between Dr. Ids, who we responded to before, and this guy who's like on the bottom, Metabolic Mike, who's into drinking raw milk. I'm not showing it. And this is a debate where it seems like he actually kind of changes his mind based on Dr. Idz's analogy. So let's just listen to that.
Say about the people that have replied in both on your videos as well as mine. I've been consuming raw milk for 20 years, never been sick. Oh, this is how my family done it. Don't you think statistically at this point we should have been hospitalized or possibly died from listeria or no?
There are people who have been driving for 50 years and have never worn a seatbelt.
Yeah.
Right? And they have not gotten into a crash. And they haven't died from driving. Are you now willing to say that driving without a seatbelt is perfectly safe?
What? That's different again because here in the U.S., if we were to enumerate all of the motor vehicle deaths and accidents, statistically it's much higher compared to the documented hospitalizations and deaths from raw milk consumption.
No.
So I think
but we're not talking about stats now. We're talking about anecdotes. So we replaced your question to me was looking at the comments and looking at the story in your situation. If I said to you there were an equal number of comments saying I've never driven with a seatbelt, I've always driven without a seatbelt, I've never gotten into a crash for 50, 60 plus years, right? Surely driving without a seatbelt is perfectly safe. That was the parallel you gave to me.
You're right.
Now I'm asking you the other way. Are you now willing to accept that driving without a seatbelt is safe?
No, I think people would think. I agree. Yeah, I see your point. That's a really good analogy.
Okay, thank you.
It is a good analogy.
Okay.
Yeah. So there you go.
And there's two aspects to that analogy. Again, he's making the basic point that anecdotal evidence is not reliable. You need statistical evidence to say like what the risk is. But you could add another layer there, and that's the survivor bias. You could say that the people who died because they weren't wearing a seatbelt are not around to say, oh, I died from not wearing a seatbelt. Similarly, if somebody got listeria and died from drinking raw milk, they're not around to say that they died from drinking raw milk. Of course, you can get sick without dying and still be around, but still there is a bit of a survivor bias in there as well. But the main point, like people using anecdotes. Oh, my grandmother smoked for 80 years and she didn't, she never got lung cancer. It's like, that's irrelevant. It's anecdotal.
Right.
You have to look at statistics. When we're looking at public health, again, I just wrote today about, and probably talk about it tonight on the show, about the new alcohol warning from the Surgeon General. You're talking about 20,000 people dying from cancer a year due to cancers that are caused by alcohol use, or the risk of getting that cancer is increased, or the increased number of people is probably due to their alcohol exposure. Yeah. So you could think statistically, again, you could use anecdotal evidence to show any point that you want to make, but we have to look at the statistics here, and even small relative or even small percentage effects, when you multiply that by 300 million people or by 8 billion people, if you're talking about the world, you start to get into real numbers, right? It's like 2.6 million excess deaths in the world, 20,000 excess deaths a year in the U.S., 100,000 people getting cancer, hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations, et cetera, et cetera. So, you always have to put public health numbers like that into the proper perspective. In terms of risk. And again, the thing is, like, we talk about these kind of public health risks all the time from both perspectives. There are times when I'm saying, this is a significant enough risk that we should wear your seatbelt. You should wear a helmet when you drive a motorcycle or ride a bike. You should not drink raw milk. You should get vaccinated, right? But at the other hand, I'm like, well, the risk of cell phone and brain cancer has been shown to be either it doesn't exist or it's so small you don't have to worry about it. Like, there is definitely a level at which the risk is so low, it's down in the background noise of just living your life. Yeah. It's like, do you drive to work every day? All right, that risk dwarfs what we're talking about here. And there is this issue that people get distracted by. I caught a cold from J2 a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just at the tail end of that. Dude, I'm not contagious.
I'm gonna stop breathing.
Yeah. No, this is just, I always have this lingering, like, I got phlegm in the back of my throat kind of cough for like weeks, sometimes months.
Oh, there's a TikTok video about that.
I know. That's nonsense too. But
okay.
It's the toxins. Anyway, so it's easy to get distracted by risks that are not relevant when we're ignoring risks that are relevant. That are orders of magnitude greater. And yeah, I mean, the social media, TikTok is kind of, known for hyping insignificant risks and distracting people from reality with, scary fear-mongering nonsense,
Well, luckily, every other major platform seems to be going in the right direction, right?
Yeah, no, it's just,
No,
this is social media. It's getting
Yeah,
worse.
it's
It's
getting
not
worse.
getting better over time. It's like
No.
any crappy, ineffective attempts they were making at fact checking, they're just giving up.
They
Like, I
literally
forget
gave
about
up.
it.
Yeah.
Let's just give up.
Well, there's still some cool science on TikTok and
There
other
is.
places. There's this one. Have you ever heard of petrichor?
No. What is that?
Petrichor. So petrichor apparently is the smell
Uh-huh.
of rain hitting dry land, and we as humans are pretty good apparently about smelling that.
Oh yeah,
hard
I
time
know
figuring
that
out
smell.
what petrichor means.
Petrichor is a new word. It was
Hank
created
Green, by
by
the
people
way.
who were alive recently.
Cool.
I don't know if they're still alive, but it was back in the 60s. And they were looking into this smell that people like. That is the smell of rain, especially rain on dry land. And it's a good smell, and it's a unique smell, and it's weird because, in part, we are so good at smelling it. You wouldn't think we'd be good at smelling it because rain is just water and water doesn't have a smell. But there's stuff in the ground, and when rain hits it, it tosses that stuff up. And in particular, there's this thing called geosmin, which is an organic compound, and we can smell it better than pretty much anything else we can smell. Human can smell like 5 parts per trillion
Wow.
of geosmin,
That's
which
pretty
is
cool.
weird.
It's weird.
And we
but
don't
it's
really know
interesting.
why. Might be because it was very important for our ancestors to be able to find water, and it's kind of a way of smelling water. It's a chemical that's created by algae in the soil, and then that gets knocked up into the air, and then the sort of aerosolized bits of rain can pop and release those compounds into the air, and we can smell them. And that's one component of petrichor, which, by the way, is from rock and ichor, ichor being like the blood of the gods. So it's like the blood of rocks. But it's very interesting to me that there's this thing that we are exceptionally good at smelling, like better than maybe anything. But there's so little of it that often the smell is not very intense. But we didn't have a word for it until extremely recently in human history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty cool. It's an interesting little thing that
Yeah,
we've
it's
all
interesting.
probably experienced.
I know that smell. I could almost imagine that smell.
Right.
I'm very familiar with it.
And it is a pleasant
But it doesn't
smell.
necessarily mean that we evolved specifically to smell that smell. It
that's
could
true.
be an epiphenomenon for something. It could be that it just is similar to something that we need to be good at smelling or whatever.
Right, because it's like if you smell it and because it leads you to water, it doesn't really lead you to water, does it? It like leads you to rain.
Yeah.
But
It's just,
like-
it rained,
Yeah, it's like maybe that's I don't know.
I don't know.
But I thought that was a fun little thing. Plus, Hank Green is pretty cool. Okay, I guess we could get on to some of the sillier things. There is the fog.
The fog.
Which I don't know if people have been on the internet as of the last week or so. The fog has been blowing up, which is not a pun, but there anyway. Here's one of them. Here we go.
This is Daytona Beach Shores, Florida at 1:45 p.m. today, and you can see the fog rolling in from 2 directions, but not in the middle part here where I'm about to show you. And then the next video that's about to come up right after this one is the balcony view, and you can't even see the ocean at all. And you can see this big ring here, very strange, and it all just happened in a matter of about 15 minutes. Keep in mind there's no rain forecasted. It's not very cold outside. This is just very unusual to see and a very random time for fog to just appear. This is Daytona Beach Shores, Florida.
Isn't Florida known for fog in the afternoon? Because it's like there's a lot of water and a lot of sun.
Humid and
a lot of humidity.
I don't know what their point is.
Doesn't it rain every afternoon in the summer in Florida?
Yeah, the one time I was in Florida during the summer, it was it's constant and random, not random, but
can be sudden.
It would be sudden, right?
Yeah.
Roll in very quickly.
Yeah, it's like the conditions are perfect for that. Somebody in the chat wrote, "Welcome to smog." I don't know that that's smog. Smog by definition is pollution and fog.
Right.
Smoke and fog, I think is the portmanteau.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's what that is. I think that's just straight up fog.
Yeah, this just looks like fog. I mean, and I don't know, maybe the media in what you consume has told you that fog is in the mountains. You know what I mean? It's about around hills or something like that. That's what you think.
You don't need to be in the hills.
I know. So
like the Misty Mountains. They're watching too much Lord of the Rings. I mean, in Connecticut, we get
Right.
lots of foggy mornings. It usually is in the morning. It's like because it was wet overnight.
Yeah.
And then, when the sun comes up in the morning, all of that moisture on the ground turns into fog.
Yeah.
And then it could be incredibly dense. Like you cannot see 10 feet in front of you dense. Like driving becomes hazardous type of fog. But then when the sun rises, once the sun hits it, it burns it off pretty quickly. But yeah, we get incredible fogs in Connecticut. It's hilly here. It's not mountainous.
But it's also, that's funny that Data Cable, you said that. Steve literally said that earlier. I'm having flashbacks to the lady videotaping a rainbow in her lawn sprinkler and asking what chemicals they add to the water that causes it.
Yeah, just telling Ian about that. That reminds me of that as well. So if you haven't seen that video, that she's kind of a batty woman, right? I mean, you could she seems a little weird, but she's like, look at this rainbow in the sprinkler. This wasn't true when I was a kid. There must be something strange, chemicals or something in the water. It's like, no, that is that's a thin film interference kind of effect. Droplets of water refract light. And because they're like basically blobs, it's like a little prism effect.
Exactly.
And it's just like a rainbow, and so it spreads the spectrum of light out. And that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what is this lady saying, or any of the people that are posting about the fog?
It's anomaly hunting. It's like, oh, something weird's happening.
Yeah.
Like that. Therefore, there must be some government conconspiracy. Or
yeah, they're getting us with the fog, with the 5G fog.
What are they putting in that fog?
So here's Mallory's thoughts. She does a pretty good deep dive on it. You can watch the whole video, but there's a couple other videos about the fog which are worth maybe watching.
And we already have wellness influencers selling detoxes
detoxes have already
fog detox,
which is crazy.
I'm about to tell you, and you are going to regret asking. So in various locations around America and in Europe, there is
Fogvid. Look at that, like. But Fogvid 24 anyway. Sorry.
And folks online are reporting that after coming into contact with this fog, they are experiencing mysterious illnesses, flu-like symptoms, and in true conspiratorial fashion, this has led folks to believe.
Wait a minute, Jay's sick. Has he been around the fog? We better contact him.
But this is not regular
He's
fog.
in the thick
this
of
is,
it.
In fact,
Get it?
What they have labeled Fogvid 24. And as you can read down here, many are theorizing that the fog is actually a chemical attack, bioweapon testing, and of course, aliens. I swear wellness influencers or like detox specialists must have almost broke both their ankles jumping on this. Here is just one, and of course if you have any questions about what she has listed about what to do, you can comment detox on the post to learn more from her. Also, don't miss this part. She talks about towers in Florida. I'm assuming she's talking about 5G towers, and of course we're all packed full of heavy metals, and that basically makes each one of us a mini tower, and this fog may contain particles that help the signal move, which of course means that we will all become
They literally did the 5G. I was just joking, and they did the 5G fog. That's crazy. I didn't think they would fall for that.
Of course they will. People are dumb.
Yeah.
And why
Let's see what this
detox.
Has anyone else noticed the insane fog that we've been experiencing lately? Or has anyone else been sick leading up to Christmas? Sore muscles, sore throat?
How could people get sick over the holidays?
In the winter? Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the reason why the virus has been spreading through my family, it's because we all get together on the holidays.
Yeah.
But also, Jay's sister-in-law and her family live in Colorado, right? And they typically visit on the holidays. And they always bring viruses with them. So I don't know if this came from them, if Jay infected them or if they infected him. But Jay's family got COVID twice. Both from their relatives in Colorado. So it's what happens is they get exposed on the plane ride over.
Of course.
And then they're with them for a week, and it's enough to incubate, and then they pass it on. And then we go over Christmas Eve or whatever, and then we get sick. And they got kids in school, got young kids in school too. It's all about putting a bunch of people together in a small space inside in the winter. That's what causes these viruses to spread. And so what's funny is ironic. I just spent 2 weeks on the inpatient service at my job and literally taking care of patients with COVID.
Oh boy!
And I did not get sick. I did not pick up anything. Of course, I masked. And then I get sick from my brother's family over Christmas.
Sounds like a psyop there if I ever heard one. Italian families famously never see each other. Famously. Yeah. So anyway, that's basically the fog recap. You can watch some more videos. It's painful. I mean, I guess just people are bored on the holidays and they need to come up with something.
Is it boredom? Is that what it is? I don't know. I think this we are conducting a natural experiment with social media here. It's like a psychological experiment on a massive scale. Like, what happens when we increase the spread of rumors and misinformation and conspiracy thinking, into a massive degree freely online? What happens?
Yeah.
This is the shit that happens. People start thinking that they have to detox from fog, and other kinds of crazy stuff that we're going to be talking about.
People hold lav mics. I know. It's funny. That's the meme.
Yeah.
Ed was like, it's a lav mic. You're supposed to clip it on, but I know.
People who hold a lav mic?
I know. That's what they do. It's weird. Oh, wait. Video paused on Discord? Sorry. Let me unpause
Oh, no. You can't pause the video.
Don't pause the video on Discord. I'll fix that, everybody. Hold on. It looks like it's moving. I'll turn it off and turn it back.
I'm going to have to get through my TikTok videos without coughing.
I know. We'll figure it out. All right, let's get through some other items. So let's move on to the WWJLPD.
What would Jean-Luc Picard or Captain Kirk do? See, why do they have Jean-Luc Picard and Captain Kirk?
I know. I should have Captain type.
It's inconsistent. You got
I know.
Pick a lane. It's either Captain Picard and Captain Kirk, or Jean-Luc Picard.
I know. But they people know more.
And James Tiberius
Kirk. Right, yeah, then JTK. Or whatever.
Now, if you had JTK there, I totally would have.
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. All right, let's get on to that one. So here's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little long.
So Jason Parchin recently posted.
Oops, sorry.
This video about Star Trek transporters and whether or not people would actually use them if they were real. And this gives me a wonderful excuse to talk about one of my favorite video game experiences ever. The video game is called Soma. It's a survival horror / walking simulator game, and I think about the ending of this game every single day, and I played it like 10 years ago. Before we get into it, the question that Jason poses is whether or not you would use a Star Trek transporter given how they would theoretically work, which is that you are deconstructed and then rebuilt somewhere else. You don't simply magically teleport. Your cells are broken down and reconstructed somewhere else, which means the version of you that arrives in the new place isn't technically still you.
So that's the part that I'm not sure we've talked about on the show.
This is the continuity problem. We've talked about this endlessly.
Right.
I would not go in a damn transporter, I gotta tell you.
But like if you're deconstructed and the same material is sent across space and then you're reconstructed, is that still problematic? As opposed to if you are deconstructed, the information of the construction is sent and then you're created with new particles.
I mean, this is an unanswerable question.
Right.
The question is, would your stream of consciousness end and an exact duplicate pick up somewhere else?
Right.
Or is there a continuity between your stream of consciousness and the person who arrives at the other side? Right? Or do you die and now a duplicate goes on to live your life?
Yeah.
You know? And it's kind of like both. I mean, the thing is, if there are transporter accidents where people get duplicated, they both think they're the real person, and in a way they both are, but maybe neither of them are. They're both just copies of the original person who's now dead. I don't know.
But I guess, do you have to be shredded, as somebody said in the chat,
yes.
I mean,
down to the molecular level.
That's what they say. So anyway, that's the interesting.
You have to count on those, those quantum stabilizers there. Those what do they call them?
Yeah, there's
Heisenberg compensators.
Right. There's no pending update from the App Store for that Heisenberg. Anyway. But she gets onto the actual video game, which is interesting. It's a little bit of a spoiler for this game, but if you've never played it or never will,
kind of dead. You've been killed and rebuilt in a new place, which is almost kind of like a clone of you. And the question arises: would you do that? Would you use it? Well, Soma has an answer to that, which is one of the most harrowing and thought-provoking things I've ever seen in any form of media ever, and as I said, I think about it constantly. See, Soma is a game about a guy who wakes up 100 years from now in an underwater scientific research base. He got into a car crash in the present day and opted to have his brain scanned. He finds out soon after in the game that he did in fact die in the present day, and the version of him that he now is in the future is an upload of himself into a robot body. He is guided through the game by a disembodied AI companion who is also an upload of the consciousness of someone who worked at this facility. So he kind of understands that even though he has all of his thoughts and his memories intact, he is in fact a robot version of himself, an AI upload of himself. And they make their way to something called the Ark, which is a computer that's going to be blasted off into space on a rocket. And playing as him, you have to upload his consciousness into this computer, which will then be sent off to this kind of perfect heaven place. And it works, kind of, because the version of him that is uploaded is then living forever in this perfect computerized digital heaven space. But the rocket takes off, and he's still there, watching it go, and he turns to her and he says, "It didn't work. I'm still here." And she says, "Look, we've been through this. It did work. You uploaded yourself into this computer, and the computer was launched into space. So there's a new version of you with all your thoughts and opinions and all your feelings and your entire consciousness right up until the moment it launched, now up in space. And this older version of you is stuck here watching it happen. That's how it works. You cannot be physically moved into the computer. A version of you is created through the upload process. So there's a version of him up in space and there's a version of him here who is stuck. And he is absolutely furious and upset that he's been left behind, even though he technically hasn't. There is a cloned version of him living the life that he wanted to live, but the original him is stuck here. And that's how Star Trek transporters technically work, I guess.
Yeah, if you exist in both places, I guess. But
yeah, there are other science fiction stories that explore that issue. So remember there was this is maybe 10, 15 years ago, about the magician who figured out how to transport himself like across the stage, but he's actually making a duplicate of himself, and every time he does it, he kills one version.
Right.
So every time, the prestige, every time he does it, there's a 50-50 chance that he'll be the one who dies versus the one who makes it to the other side. And does it matter? I guess if you're the one that dies, it matters. But also, I think just I don't know if it was a short story that I read a long time ago where it was a similar kind of thing in that I think it was, there's some version of this. I may have the details totally wrong, but this is the key details are, we make contact with an alien species, right? And they're like benign aliens who give us the cure for cancer and all that kind of stuff. And if you want, you can be teleported to their home world, right? You go into the booth, they teleport you to them, and then you arrive you get teleported through the teleportation wormhole to whatever technology. You arrive on their home planet. But the protagonist of the story finds out that what's actually happening is they're just making a duplicate of you on the home planet, and then they incinerate the original version of you, right? So you are dying, and then there's just a duplicate of you on that thinks it was teleported to the planet on the other side. So, yeah, I think that is the transporter. It incinerates you on the and then makes a copy of you on the other side.
There's a fun fan theory also of like Super Mario, where every time you die, his body is just down there and there's a new Mario. So there's just like littered under the screen of dead Marios.
So when you think about it, if the transporter it doesn't need, I mean, it takes an image of you. It doesn't need to deconstruct you.
That's what I was questioning.
It just takes all your information and then makes a copy of you on the other side.
Yeah.
If it delayed incinerating you by 2 seconds, does that matter? Does the fact that it incinerates you as it scans you and then makes a copy on the planet?
Why does
is that different than scanning you and then waiting a few seconds? There's a copy of you on the planet. You're there, but then it incinerates you as the extra.
Right.
Now you're redundant. So it makes it a little bit more obvious that it's just killing you.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I don't know. It's fun. It's an interesting thing, but I don't like it.
I don't like it.
Just move the brain there.
Yeah, right.
Give me a robot body and just zoom me over there.
Now, it also brings up another point, which is that there is no uploading.
Yeah, there's no way
right. Your
to do
consciousness isn't a thing that can be moved.
Yeah, right.
Right.
From medium to medium.
Right, from medium to medium. That is a fiction. That is conceptually does not exist. All you could do is copy the information.
Mm-hmm.
You can copy it in a non-destructive way. You can copy it in a destructive way.
Yeah.
But it's still just copying the information. You are not uploading, right?
Yeah. Right.
In that way, in that you are moving your consciousness. That's a very salient point which I've made before myself. It's not that is a dualist fiction. The idea that your consciousness is somehow separate your physical brain. It isn't. It is your physical brain. So anything other than your physical brain is not you. It is not you.
Right.
You would need. So then the question becomes: is there any way to become a digital or robot consciousness without losing that continuity? And the answer, it may be no, but I think that if there is any possibility, it would require some kind of process like this. So imagine if you get an implant, doesn't have to be physically in your brain, but connected to your brain, that's basically like another lobe of your brain. It's a supercomputer that you interface with, right? This is a brain cap or whatever. So, there's lots of versions of this in science fiction. It's a computer brain that meshes seamlessly with your biological brain. So you're just adding something to your brain. You're not taking anything away. You're not uploading or moving anything. But over time, this becomes fully integrated into your consciousness. Your consciousness is now 2 biological lobes and 1 computer lobe. And then because the computer lobe, let's say it has 10 times as much memory and processing power as your biological lobes, over time, your meat brain becomes an insignificant component of your total brain. And you at some point, you would not notice it. Like when your biological brain goes to sleep, you basically wouldn't notice. Because everything is duplicated in the computer brain.
Yeah, it's like the ship of Theseus, as people were saying.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Kind of
you keep replacing,
it.
But it's not just. It's not replacing the parts. So that's a different. I consider that a different process where let's say if you replace your neurons with artificial neurons one by one, you wouldn't notice it. But eventually, your whole brain is artificial neurons. It's like, okay, that's sort of the same thing, but it's destructive. It's a little different. I just think it's better just to have it be additive. Just you add, the computer brain until that's the majority of your consciousness. It's more of an evolution over time. At least it's seamless enough that there's reasonable continuity. The end of the process, you aren't yourself. You are something else, but it's sufficiently continuous that it at least feels better.
Yeah.
But I think there's no way around the fact that you are your brain.
Right.
And there's no way to move that. If you lose your brain, you lose you, period.
That's it. All right, we got some other things. Somebody was talking about quantum, and I want to find this video that I saw, which was pretty
Quantum?
funny.
We don't do quantum here.
Yeah, we don't do the quantums.
You mean like quantum computers?
Yeah, exactly. Although the 50 series of the new graphics card from NVIDIA came out, everybody, if you're tech nerds and you're looking at those, they're pretty fun. Although they use a lot of hype words like AI and stuff in them, which is interesting, although maybe it's good. How quantum mechanics sounds. I think that's what the video is. Let me see. It was pretty funny. I'll have to find it while we're on to something else. Let's see. Let's go on to another.
Your cells get replaced all the time, but your neurons don't.
That's true.
Neurons do not turn over. They pretty much got them for life.
Yeah, give me some new neurons. What the heck? Why can't we... what are those? Where's that? Detox?
I mean, you do retain neuronal stem cells even to old age, and they are responsible for some plasticity and learning, which of course is changing, right? You are changing who you are. You're changing. The brain is a dynamic thing. It's not a static thing. But the majority of your brain is neurons that are not replaced. They don't die. They are you.
All right, here we go. This is the video, I think.
It's like explaining quantum mechanics.
Oops.
Okay, so electrons orbit around the nucleus of an atom, right?
Yep. Sort of.
Okay, and
That's
we
a
can
metaphor.
figure out its position, right?
Hold on.
Its position is also a metaphor. It's probability.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So then if we just figure out its momentum, then we can understand the behavior of electrons, right? Nope. But we have its location. Yep. So then we just have to figure out its momentum. Nope. Can we figure out its momentum? Yep. Okay, so then we just use where its location is. Nope. What? It has to have a location. It can't be in two places at once, right? Yep.
Yes, it can.
So you're saying that the electron is here and also here? Yep. That's ridiculous. Let's just find the momentum of the electron, and then we can figure out its behavior. I mean, like, it's not going anywhere, right?
Again with the Heisenberg.
Okay, we can find an electron's position, right? Yep. And we can find an electron's momentum, right? Yep. So let's just use both. Nope. Okay, but we know its momentum. Where does it go? Gone. Yeah, you said that before. What does that mean? What do you mean gone? What are you saying? It's here and here, but that it's also not here and here? Yep. Okay, but we know electrons are particles, right? Nope. But they're represented as particles, right? Yep. So then they're particles, right? Yep. Wait, but before when I asked that you said no, so are they particles or are they not particles? Yep. Are they waves? Yep. Okay, so are they particles or are they waves? Yep. This is ridiculous. You're telling me people just accepted this logic with no issue at all? Nope. Okay, so for example, like, what did Schrödinger have to say about it? Cat.
Cat. Okay.
This is what it's like.
Anyway, hey,
what's interesting about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle is
make this stop, please.
Initially, I thought it was just a limitation on our ability to gain knowledge about systems.
That's the joke.
But it seems like it's an actual physical property of the universe.
Yeah.
It's not that we can't know the precise location and momentum of a quantum particle. It can't have a precise momentum and position at the same time. It actually is a physical phenomenon, even though it is quantum. So it's,
but it's interesting. I mean, like, humans need the intuitive or whatever. Like,
well,
how does it relate to my physical world, the big world?
What's interesting is, somebody like recently like criticized something I wrote, which was a metaphor. They're like, it's a metaphor. You didn't say specifically that was a metaphor. It's like, dude, everything is a metaphor. Everything, pretty much, right? Anything in science communication, unless you're doing the math, right? Unless you are a scientist who is doing the actual math, all the stuff we say about like what a black hole is, like, you don't know what a black hole is. What you know is a metaphor that scientists tell you to sort of help you wrap your non-expert brain around an idea of what it might be. Even they don't really know, but they're like, yeah, this is our sort of working metaphor for what it might be. But really, if you want to understand what it's a mathematical phenomenon, basically, is what it is. It's all metaphors, all the way down, basically. It's another quote that I said recently on the show. That's very, very common is that, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. No model is actually the way the universe actually functions. It's just things that we use to predict observations and experiments and stuff, right? They're just prediction models.
Yeah, imagine just having a model that actually predicted reality. Like 100%. That's crazy.
That actually was reality.
Right, was
that's the
reality.
thing. That
Yeah, that's true.
We may be very good at predicting reality. We are very good at it. Again, we could send a rocket to Pluto and it works, right? So we predicted what would happen based upon our models of momentum and all that stuff. But again, these are just metaphors. They're just a way for our primate brain to sort of grapple with things. And quantum mechanics is just the most obviously nutty. That's just the most. It's again, nobody anyone understands quantum mechanics. We maybe have wrapped our head around some, metaphors that the scientists have told us about what's going on. You know what I mean? That's it. That's really it. It's all metaphors. If you don't understand that, then then you're missing a huge piece. That's the problem. So what we see with a lot of cranks, a lot of YouTube videos or TikTok videos, you have non-experts who think that their oversimplified metaphors are reality, and then they start talking about science as if they understand it because they understand the metaphors. Right? What was that? There was one recently, I can't remember what it was specifically, but the guy said, again, it was doing this so blatantly, like, oh, I'm rewriting physics. I haven't done the math yet. So you haven't done fucking anything is what you're saying. If you haven't done the math, you've done nothing. You've done literally nothing. All you're doing is just fooling yourself into thinking that these oversimplified metaphors are reality. They aren't. The math is everything, right? Doing the actual statistics or the mathematical calculations or whatever. When you're talking about like how quantum mechanics functions, we're all just trying to understand the results of experiments with some kind of predictive model, but it's not reality. This also gets to the just shut up and calculate comment, which we've talked about on the show before, where like I can't remember who it was, but it was the one scientist asking another quantum scientist, like, do you think this is how things actually work? And he's like, just shut up and calculate, right? Just do the math, because that's all we really have. We don't actually know how the universe actually works.
Yeah, right.
But this is an interesting philosophical question. It's like how much, if our models aren't reality, then how are they so good at predicting reality sometimes, right? And, that's a good question. I do think there is a meaningful relationship between our scientific models and reality. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so good at predicting. But we always have to remember that they're just that. They're not the ultimate understanding of actual reality. People who think that are cranks.
Yeah.
Right. Right. I haven't done the math yet. Shut up. Go home. Go home.
Do the math. I want to say thank you, Cheeses, for the super chat. Ever considered interviewing Mini Minuteman? I know that dude is pretty cool on YouTube. We've talked about it actually before.
Archaeology is fun.
Archaeology, yeah, and does good takedown videos of.
We've had some archaeologists on the show previously to talk about archaeology, pseudoarchaeology.
God, there's so much.
Egypt. That's a good reference. Yeah, we could always happy to get further. And there's a lot of TikTok videos. I've done a dozen at least on pseudoarchaeology. How did they make these perfectly smooth stone vases or whatever? They polished them.
Yeah, right.
They spent years polishing them. That's what happened, because they had nothing else to do. At the time, they didn't have video games, so they're like, I'm going to polish this really, really, really good.
Is the audio good on YouTube, chat? Let me know if not. I guess we could move on to the Tickety Talks.
Sure.
Since we're in that realm. If there's anything else you guys have before we move on, we'll do that. Let me just bring up the topics. Also, give me something to say in the email that we're going to send out this week. We'll have a recap of the last episode and maybe the last two, since those were the end of the year ones, which are fun. But I usually like to put a little quote in the chat or in there. AI misinfo. We'll get into that one of the TikToks, and maybe I'll play a video after that TikTok just to show that something I found while I was on the interwebs. Audio's good. Okay, good. All right, let's move on to the Tickety Talks. There's this. You want to do this guy first,
Sure.
or okay? Let me just restart this. Oops. Let me restart this recording real quick. Okay, talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves. The effect of the papacy on the British parliamentary system. Go.
Keyboard is dead. Oh no. Oh, there it goes. Oh. There we go. Well, it's called that now, I think. Yeah.
People are saying the audio is good.
Okay, good. Thank you, chat. Appreciate that. Stop the recording there. Call this Wednesday. And we'll do that in a ring box. Okay.
You know how you get cool? That complimented my cool-looking white hair. Thank you. The way you get it is to go gray really early.
That's true.
It's true because the process of gray is you get the salt and pepper, and then the hair is actually not gray. It's white. It just it looks gray. That's an optical illusion. It's because the gray hair is mixed with the darker hair. The white hair and the darker hair combined, you perceive it as gray. But when you get a high enough percentage of your hair goes gray, it's actually white. And yeah, I agree. I like the look of white hair better than gray hair, actually.
Somebody was saying that Jay is, I believe Jay is Steve's son, and it's like no.
Jay's my younger brother. Not the first time that's happened.
I know.
Although Jay still looks pretty young for his age. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Jay looks young for his age. Bob looks young for his age. I look old for my age. Bob's actually a year older than I am, but Bob now has gone significantly gray. So Bob's starting to look his age more and more. So I think that is happening. That's Jay.
That's right. Until he flexes, and then
still,
it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Jay still looks pretty young for his age.
Yeah.
But no, Jay's only 4 years younger than I am.
Why not the brows? Oh yeah, we color those before this live stream each week. Yeah,
I don't know. My brows have not. I do have gray hairs in my eyebrows. There's not that many.
Yeah.
What I hate about that though is, the gray hairs are crazy, man. They just do not obey the laws of physics or whatever. They're my mentat eyebrows, I'd like to say. So I have to keep them trimmed to basically just keep them under control.
Yeah. All right, let's start up with this. Let me make sure that's.
I have a lot of cousins who went gray early, so it's clearly genetic. I don't think it's any lifestyle thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Connecticut weather.
No.
No. All right, here we go.
Process is a CIA-sanctioned meditation that's supposed to help you
let me get the
transcend
beginning
your
of it.
dimension. The Gateway process is a CIA-sanctioned meditation that's supposed to help you transcend your dimension, and that sounds really crazy. What's even crazier is they tried to use this for spying. Now, I get a lot of DMs, but the DM I get the most is specific instructions on how to do the Gateway tapes. I have a lot of experience with these myself. I got pictures and shit for you, so let's go. And if you don't know what the Gateway process is, here is it summarized in 1 minute. Now, back in the day, Robert Monroe was a hobo and was not very successful, but he did start to find success, and in the midst of that, he started having very specific dreams that told him very specific things. These dreams felt real. Orbs were talking to him. It tripped him out, and it started happening to him when he was awake, too. He thought he was crazy, but he listened to what they told him, and he created some amazing technology. Now, he listened to what they said, and it worked. These frequencies synchronize the hemispheres of your brain, so when they send out electrical impulses, they both meet at the same time at your spinal cord. Normally, they are offset. The left brain and the right brain fire so they don't hit each other. They're passing by each other like cars in traffic. With hemisync, they hit each other at the same time. Now, the CIA quickly found this and realized that it does kind of work and thought, we can use this extra...
That was like the main neurological...
That was it. That was the money shot.
Hello. All right. We're rolling.
Well, that was a bunch of nonsense. But let me break it down for you a little bit. I'm a neuroscientist, by the way, so I always get interested when I hear people talking neuroscience on the interwebs. The Gateway Project, this is part of the CIA. They wanted to know if we could use ESP or psi phenomenon of any kind in order to spy on the Ruskies, right, and spy on our enemies. They spent about $20 million, and they found basically, no, not so much. They abandoned it because it wasn't going anywhere. This is one of their projects that they were doing. And this went nowhere. what the Gateway Project is just a bunch of pseudoscience. It's interwoven with some real science, like they talk about real things, like physics and stuff, but they also just weave in just completely out of the box speculation, just pulling it out of their backside, raw speculation. At the end of the day, they proved nothing. It's not science. It's classic crank pseudoscience. But I do want to address the neurological statement that was made in there. The idea that the two hemispheres of the brain are not synchronized together. That is straight up wrong. That is just false. The two hemispheres are absolutely synchronized together. There's a massive cable running between the two hemispheres, the corpus callosum. There's also other connections as well, like the anterior commissure, for example. There's robust interneurons, neurons on both sides of the brain talking to each other and synchronizing with each other all the time. You can see this synchronization when you do an EEG, an electroencephalogram. In fact, if we do an EEG and the two hemispheres are not in sync, that's a serious neurological condition. That's bad. There is some serious problem going on if your hemispheres are not basically synchronized to each other. He talks about them sort of reaching the spinal cord at the same time. That's nonsensical. It's even hard to know what that even is referring to. Most of the signals that are going from the brain to the spinal cord are the motor pathways, right? These are the cortical spinal tracts, as we call them. This is how your brain controls your voluntary movement throughout your body. And this is exquisitely synchronized and controlled. These are not just haphazardly sending signals down the spinal cord. First of all, a third of the fibers coming from your motor cortex go to your cerebellum. What does the cerebellum do? It coordinates all of your motor activity so that you do coordinated movements. And then those signals go down your spinal cord into your muscles to produce voluntary movement. So it's just nonsensical. It doesn't align with neurological reality at all. And it's straight up wrong. So right there, the whole premise of this gateway method is something neurologically nonsensical and straight up false, and which is not surprising given that the whole thing is basically pseudoscience.
Very good, very good. Okay.
Your brain hemispheres in sync.
Who? Sure.
Seriously, like asynchronous hemispheres, like you're fucking comatose.
Yeah,
that's like you're
so.
you're having serious issues if you can't, or you have someone has severed your corpus callosum. That might happen.
That's true. That's an interesting phenomenon, right? Like, like drawing two.
It's fascinating.
Things, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. But we do that mostly in people who are one hemisphere is not working anyway. Right. All it's doing is seizing, and we're just protecting the other hemisphere from the seizures coming from the bad hemisphere that's not doing much.
How do you dampen the seasoning on that one side? Can
seizing?
Seizing, sorry.
Medication.
Seizuring. Medication.
Drugs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, just drugs that inhibit excessive neuronal activity. And we're experimenting with embedding computer chips into people to do it. There's deep brain stimulation, vagal nerve stimulation, basically using electrical or magnetic stimulation to try to inhibit them when they occur, keep them from spreading. But mostly it's drugs.
Yeah.
Anti-seizure medication.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty. Hold on. Let me. TikTok's yelling at me for not clicking on it.
That's also why the whole left brain, right brain thing is nonsense.
Right.
It's complete nonsense. Because most of the networks in your brain that do stuff communicate across the two hemispheres. You know what I mean? So what does it really mean? They're not they're all just completely doing their own thing. Yes, some functions do lateralize, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that
you're more creative.
They're not communicating across or influencing each other across. That's why it's so interesting when you do sever the corpus callosum, people have very interesting behaviors because that's not normally how the brain functions.
Yeah. I mean, if that was true, what would that even mean? Like your neurons on one side are better or faster or something? Like how would that? What would that mean? Like
the brainstem basically activates your cortex and keeps it going in a steady rhythm.
Right.
And it's all synchronized and all happening together.
Yeah. So It's like, George, you use 100% of your brain.
Yes, you use 100% of your brain.
I mean, maybe not everybody, but...
well, not all the time.
Not all the time.
Right?
Well, of course,
so you don't use
probably be
100% of your muscles all the time. That would be pretty painful.
Oh, yeah.
But you do pretty much use all your muscles.
Yeah, at some point.
At some point. Just not all at once.
Okay, so here's this next video, which was...
This fucking guy.
This fucking guy. Aside from what he's saying... We were thinking it's AI. I mean, he is on a background removal. That's why it cuts off his ear and his hair.
Yeah.
So that gives kind of a false impression, but also the low res. So it's like,
but his mouth is not really moving properly.
Yeah, his mouth is weird, and his eyes kind of weird. But he does the hand gestures that mime with what he says. So we're not sure if it's AI. But this guy is for real. He's a real guy, and he says basically the same stuff. So it could be just like, you know what I mean? He just made an AI video because
he does this. He does say the same stuff. This is not somebody. Putting words into his mouth.
Which I have a video opposite that, which I will show after this, but here we go.
And they found 49 countries, 500,000 people, that the individuals who consumed the most salt every single day had the best blood pressure readings and the most normal blood pressure readings. And all the individuals who consumed 3 times the amount the FDA tells you should consume salt every day. Every person around the world that consumed 3 times that amount had better blood pressure readings than anybody who took the FDA readings. Now, they publish in the Lancet in the UK where you are. The Lancet is a medical journal. They publish the results of the study that the more salt someone consumes, the better their blood pressure is, and the lower their risk factors for stroke and heart attack become. When you just asked me why and who benefits from this lie, why would they tell us this lie? Did you see that when that was published by the Lancet, did you see who threatened the Lancet with pulling their funding if they publish that study and don't retract it? The American Heart Association threatened the Lancet and told them, you publish that study, we're going to pull all of your funding. You have to retract that study. All right, so the next question for you is, why would the American Heart Association be angry at a medical journal for publishing a study, largest one ever done in history, proving that salt intake, the more salt you eat, the lower your risk factor for high blood pressure, strokes, and heart attacks is? Why is that a threat to the American Heart Association?
That's good.
Which, by the way...
All right, yeah. So, yeah, we're not sure if it's actually AI. It might be like a beauty filter that's weird, you know? But it does look like AI.
Yeah,
but regardless,
something going on.
This guy says all the same dumb crap. All right, here we go.
Everything that guy said was completely wrong. He clearly either has no idea what he's talking about or is deliberately lying. I don't know. But all I know is what he's saying is just nonsense. He's not an expert. He's a retired chiropractor, acupuncturist, selling his alternative nonsense. And this is now a very common marketing ploy that we see a lot on social media. If you have your snake oil clinic or product or whatever, you're selling something, invent some weird medical conspiracy theory about how they're lying to you about this, or this is a toxin or whatever, scare people about something and say, then buy my product, right? That's what he's doing. But let's break it down a little bit. So first of all, let's look at the evidence of the relationship between salt and blood pressure. This has been researched for decades. It's actually pretty uncontroversial. It's very well established that in people who have high blood pressure, the higher their salt intake, the higher their blood pressure. Right? And if they lower their salt intake, that will lower their blood pressure. There is a clear relationship, pretty much a linear relationship between salt intake and blood pressure in people who have high blood pressure. We also know that high blood pressure definitely is a risk factor for heart attacks and for strokes. That's uncontroversial. Where the evidence does get controversial and where the Lancet study comes in is, well, what's the case for people with normal blood pressure at baseline, right? If you have normal blood pressure, is salt still an issue? Should you still keep your salt to a minimum? Now, the American Heart Association and some cardiologists and some researchers, some scientists hold that the evidence shows that there's basically a linear relationship between salt intake and blood pressure throughout the blood pressure spectrum, right? Even if you're normal blood pressure, you still should keep your salt intake low to avoid developing high blood pressure. However, some experts say, well, when definitely with high blood pressure, salt intake is an issue, but with normal blood pressure, we basically don't know. We just don't know. And partly because it's hard to research, right? It's hard to research because you can't do an experiment. You can't control how much salt people eat. People are outliving their lives, you know. So for nutritional things in general, it's really hard to do controlled experiments. So we do observational studies where, in this case, they measure blood pressure, they measure salt intake, they track cardiovascular outcomes, and they make correlational studies. They correlate it statistically. Now, what the Lancet study was saying was that the Lancet study actually confirmed the relationship between salt intake and high blood pressure. So this guy's completely wrong about that. Even the study he is citing does not show that. He's completely misrepresenting the findings. It confirms the association between high blood pressure and salt intake. But it says at the low end, it's like a U-shaped curve where if you go too low in your salt intake, it actually can lower your blood pressure, not cause high blood pressure like he falsely says. It lowers your blood pressure and could actually be a risk factor for heart disease. It could be dangerous if your salt intake is too low. So they're basically saying, yes, if you have high blood pressure, you should lower your salt intake. If you have normal blood pressure, don't lower your salt intake. And that's different than the American Heart Association's recommendations. Now, why did the AHA criticize... I'm going to have to cut these. Now, why did the AHA criticize the Lancet study? Well, there are some perfectly legitimate criticisms of that study. First, their patient selection. They chose patients who had a very high risk of heart disease. And the criticism is, well, you can't generalize from that population to the general public. It's quite possible that people who already are at very high risk for heart disease have a low salt diet because they have heart disease. If you have heart disease and you go to your doctor, he's likely going to tell you, go on a low salt diet. So in other words, the heart disease may have been causing the low salt diet, not the other way around. Secondly, they chose a very problematic measure of salt intake. They measured just the urinary salt in the morning and extrapolated your 24-hour salt intake from that one urinary measure. There's no perfect way to do it, but the method they chose was not great, and so that came under criticism as well. People also criticized their statistical analysis, saying that the U-shaped curve was actually an artifact of bad statistical analysis. So the AHA, the American Heart Association, had good reason to criticize the quality of that study. That study didn't prove anything, as this guy, again, falsely says. It just shows that, well, maybe it's not a linear relationship when you get down to normal blood pressure. Maybe it's more of a U-shaped curve. And we need more research, is I think the real bottom line answer there. But none of this calls into question the association between high blood pressure and high salt intake. This study supported that. That's pretty much an uncontroversial finding. Now, the guy goes on to then, of course, you have to create your conspiracy theory, right? Why is the AHA lying about salt and blood pressure? Because they're in a conspiracy. He basically goes on to say, well, they get their funding from the pharmaceutical industry. Really? Do they? I looked it up. They get 3.8% of their funding from pharmaceutical and biotech and medical device companies. So even if you said all of that 3.8% are pharmaceutical companies making antihypertensive drugs, it's not. But even if you did, that's just 3.8% of their funding. That's an insignificant amount of their funding. Are they going to compromise their reason for existing, their core mission to reduce heart disease because of 3.8% of their funding? It's ridiculous. Look it up for yourself. He also implies or says outright that the AHA threatened to pull its funding from the Lancet if they didn't retract their study. I couldn't find any evidence of that. What I did look up, though, was who funds the Lancet. The Lancet, as he says, it's a UK journal. Why would the American Heart Association be funding a UK journal? From what I could tell, they don't. They are not listed among the funders. The Lancet is published by Elsevier, right? That's a publishing organization. They get funding from lots of sources, none of which apparently are the American Heart Association. I also don't think that the Lancet or Elsevier would cave into pressure from an American organization about publishing a study. Now, whether or not the study gets retracted or not has to do with an analysis of the quality of the science, and that's been debated. Oftentimes, what scientific and medical journals will do is just debate the implications and what conclusions we can draw from a study. Only if there's like outright fraud or outright error, blatant mistakes, will they actually retract the study. In this case, it's more like, well, your patient population was problematic, your statistical analysis was problematic, your measuring technique for salt was problematic. That's not enough to get a paper retracted. That's enough to criticize the paper and debate it in the literature, but that's not something that we typically retract papers for. So the AHA wouldn't make that request. I don't see any evidence that they did. They're not a funder for the Lancet anyway. So this guy is basically just weaving a made-up conspiracy theory out of whole cloth to sell his snake oil, but nothing that he says comports with reality. Nothing.
Very good. Salt. Ay, ay, ay. Let me play a little video that I found. I was perusing the interwebs, and of course I was not logged into YouTube, and so I got the wackiest ads, and there's some weird AI ads going around. Let's see this one. So here's Dr. Oz.
Yeah, it looks like Dr. Oz.
Yeah, and in here I'll just play a little bit of it.
How old is this video?
No, it was just
Imagine your diabetes costs more.
I just saw this yesterday, actually. I just screen recorded it. I was watching something, and it opened up in Safari.
Multiplied by 573 million. This is how many people like you face diabetes every day. So Pfizer, Walgreens, and other pharmaceutical giants want you to get sick so they can keep making money off your health. Lucky
is
for
that
you,
AI?
There's a
yeah, this one, definitely the voice. And if you watch it, like, it repeats the same like movements, so it's like clearly it's not bad, but it is low res. Like this should be high res.
Simple sleeping trick you can try tonight to wake up to a perfect
But
90 on the meter.
It's a little off.
Yeah, it sounds weird.
Found by Oxford scientists attacks sticky cells packed.
But it's still pretty good, like in terms of tricking people. Anyway, I clicked through because I wanted to see what happened, and it's like. It's like, make sure you're over 18, which I was like, oh, God. But then it's just like this weird presentation, like trying to grab your email and whatever about like some nonsense about, I think it was diabetes, type 2 diabetes.
Is there any specific regulation about using your persona, your image, your voice?
That I think is a good question.
There should be. That should be illegal. You should be able to sue them to take it down.
The thing is, Dr. Oz might have just been like, yeah, you can use my likeness, because he kind of is a quack too. I
know that.
Quack. But like, so maybe he's just like, whatever, do whatever you want, pay me
$10,000. He's usually a little bit more savvy than that. That's a little blatant. That's why I mean, like, that doesn't sound like Dr. Oz to me. I'm not defending him. I'm just saying I'm familiar with his shtick. That's not his shtick. That's straight up. They want to keep you sick to sell you their drugs. Kind of thing is a little bit simplistic for him.
Yeah. So it's not just like the misinformation, but it's also an indictment of like YouTube and what ads they're running. Because after this, I got like 3 other crazy ads that were like, some were like highly sexual, and then they like went to like a diet website. So like it's clearly they don't care, or they don't review enough their ad policy. So whatever. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I know that there are likeness rights, as somebody says in the chat. I was wondering if there's anything specifically for AI uses.
Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling not. Right now, until somebody gets pissed off.
Because AI is interesting because that can blur the lines very easily because it's all regenerative, it's reconstructive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So technically, it is something else. Is it under parody law? But it's not really parody. I mean, but that's my interpretation.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not like a legal definition of parody? You know, is it whatever, fair use?
Yeah, I think the laws. My point is, I think they probably need to be significantly tightened up, and they need to be more specific for the ways in which you could use AI to. And you know, there's lots of, like, it just reminded me of like the Halloween costume thing. You know, where like you have Halloween costumes that are generically named, you know, like Italian plumber, you know, it's Mario, you know, but they can't say Mario,
right?
Because that's protected. So they say Italian plumber, but it looks exactly like Mario,
right?
You know, so
classic Italian plumber,
Italian plumber, or whatever, you know, like there's all those like those kind of costumes where it's clearly somebody specific, but they're generically named it to avoid copyright laws.
Yeah.
But the AI is sort of was made for that, like, you know, like it's a Dr. Oz-ish kind of. You could say, well, it's not really him. It's just somebody might confuse it for him, but that's, you know, that's their problem.
I mean, this one's pretty much Dr. Oz.
Yeah,
it's not even like the video. I think they stole the video and just like swapped his mouth movements. You know what I mean? Like that's
yeah, it's a video of him,
right? And then they just like
that's different.
Reworked it. Anyway, for Luigi. Everybody does. Okay, here we go. Let's roll, and here we go.
I left a comment on this one. I don't know if anybody answered. Sometimes I do that.
I want to talk a little bit about homeopathy. A lot of people believe the word homeopathy is synonymous with holistic or functional medicine, natural medicine, that sort of thing. It's not. Homeopathy is its own, very own specialized healing art. It involves specific remedies that usually come in a little lactose pellet or in a liquid that you take in drops. A lot of conventional thinking people don't believe in homeopathy because it doesn't conform to the standard conventional rules that prescription medications conform to.
That's good.
But it's been practiced all over the world.
Okay, see if I can get through this. Yeah, they don't conform to the usual rules. What do we call them again? Oh, yeah, the laws of physics. The homeopathy has a lot of skeptics because it violates the laws of physics and biochemistry and biology and things that we know about how the body works and how stuff works, right? So I agree with him on one point. A lot of people do think that homeopathy is a generic term for natural or herbal treatments or whatever. It isn't. It is a very specific thing. Let me tell you what that specific thing is, because it's utter, complete witchcraft. First of all, it's based on the notion of like treats like, which isn't a thing. It's just a form of sympathetic magic. It's like, oh, if this causes a symptom, that this substance, then if we take the essence of that substance and dilute it out of existence, except for the essence, which is left behind, then it will treat those symptoms. There's no mechanism for that. That's not scientific in any way. That's not based upon our understanding of how the universe works or biology works or anything. It's just made up magical thinking. But there's also the notion of dilution, that you make the essence more powerful by diluting the substance. And so they dilute the substance, again, I said, most of the time out of existence, right? So much so that you're down to background levels. You know, like 30C is a common dilution. That's a 1 to 100 dilution 30 times. And you can get creative in calculating like how much you would have to drink in order to have a 50-50 chance of getting one molecule of the original substance. It's something like the volume of the solar system. That's what we're talking about. So basically, there's no original ingredient left. So then, okay, if there's nothing left in the treatment, like you're starting with worm root or whatever, you make a homeopathic dilution, so there's none of it actually in the final thing. It's just water, which they then put on a sugar pill, and you take the sugar pill. They say, well, the water retains the memory of the essence of the wormwood or whatever it is you're putting in there. And there's no science to that either. That's complete nonsense. So water somehow could retain the memory of any substance that was diluted in it, but only if you go through the magical shaking 10 times, whatever. Again, it's again looks like more like witchcraft than anything else. And then it survives when you put it on the drop of sugar, and then it survives when you eat it, and then it goes through your body. And meanwhile, the water is maintaining this essence throughout that whole process and getting it to where it needs to go in your body. It's magic. It's utter and complete nonsensical magical thinking. And no, it doesn't work. We could also separately ask, well, because for some reason people have tested whether or not homeopathic remedies actually do anything, and that's been going on for about 100 years. And there's been enough studies now where we could say that, well, homeopathy has not been proven to work for anything. There isn't a single thing for which homeopathic remedies have been shown to be clinically effective. Because of course they haven't, because it's literally just a sugar pill. It's nothing. And there have been multiple systematic reviews looking at dozens of potential indications, hundreds of studies, and nothing. There is no effect there. Homeopathy can't work because it's magic. It doesn't work when we study it nonetheless. This guy is just riffing about his own personal experience because he's a homeopath, right? As we say, if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail to you. This guy's a homeopath, so what's he going to say? But the science is very clear here. Homeopathy is witchcraft, and it doesn't work.
All right.
Three and done.
Three and
Those
done.
are good ones this week.
Yeah, they're good. Remember, chat, if you've come across any funny ones or weird ones or something strange you see on the TikToks and elsewhere, make sure to send it in or tag us in those videos, and we will hopefully bring that up for next week. I know there's somebody asking about the Telepathy Tapes podcast.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of emails about that. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet.
Maybe we'll do that for next week.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably nothing new in there, but I mean,
yeah.
Usually it's always the same-o.
Yeah, exactly. So we will try that. And then anything else, chat, before we go? Whoops, I'm breaking this monitor while I'm doing this. Other than that, we'll skedaddle. Let's see if there's anything from any of the questions. Do you think type 2 diabetes will be fixed?
Well, what do you mean by fixed?
Yeah, question mark.
So, I mean, we've significantly fixed it in terms of treating it with medication and diet and exercise, lifestyle factors, right? If you lose weight and exercise regularly and have a diabetes-friendly diet and take medication if necessary, you could get to the point where you're not suffering any ill consequences from your type 2 diabetes. Is that fixed or just managed? Can we cure it? We're not close to doing that now. It's a combination of, years of lifestyle choices as well as genetics. Probably it would take a genetic fix. So, that's a little bit ways off. There's the potential to do that, but, not anytime soon. That's kind of where we are with it. There are some things that it's like saying, are we ever going to cure old age? Well, probably not, but we're getting better at mitigating it, Type 1 diabetes is different. Type 2 diabetes is essentially the short of it is you're resistant to insulin. And that can burn out your ability to produce insulin, but it's mainly insulin resistance. Whereas type 1 diabetes is the islet cells in your pancreas die, probably because of an autoimmune process, and then therefore you lose the cells that make the insulin, so you're not making insulin. So there are treatments now with that they're still experimental, but they're happening where we basically use stem cells to replace your islet cells. So that is closer to a cure because you're replacing the cells that died, and they can make insulin. So that's as close to a cure as you get. But that's still we're dealing with like replacing cells with stem cells and stuff. That's still a very tricky sort of experimental technology.
Yeah.
And then there's a question of, can we have like artificial pancreas, right? So where you have a machine that measures your blood glucose and releases insulin based upon what you need. It's basically a cyborg pancreas, So that we have that as well. And is that a cure? It goes a long way to giving you a normal life, but not a full cure. We can't regenerate tissue. That would be nice when we get to that point where we could like literally regenerate tissue. That's kind of the only way to cure a lot of things.
Stewie Griffin says, hello, is cancer, and I think they're saying create a black hole. I don't think so.
No. So, I mean, there was some discussion of the possibility that some experiments in CERN might create like a microscopic black hole, but they exist for a fraction of a second or something, and they immediately evaporate. But I don't think is a thing.
Yeah.
So I'd have to look into it again and see if there's any update on it. But the whole CERN's going to create a black hole and suck up the Earth thing is nonsense. That's nothing to worry about. And there are more important things to worry about in the world than CERN creating a black hole or summoning demons. Some people are worried about CERN summoning demons.
Well, I mean, Shiva's right outside.
Yeah.
How do you manage working as a doctor and a podcast host and a YouTuber, TikToker at the same time? Are you one of the 30-hour day people? Yes. We have Steve on a strict 30 hours a day diet.
Trying to cut back to 24.
Yeah. We'll get there eventually. Yeah. I think that's it. I think good luck, everybody, in 2025 if we don't see you. And
are we doing a Friday live stream?
Yeah, we could do Friday. Friday seems good.
I might be a little late.
Okay, well, we can set up another quiz.
I have a meeting, but I should be okay.
Set up a quiz, do some other fun stuff. If you guys don't come to the Friday live streams, they're fun. There's usually 4 of the rogues are there.
Evan, maybe a guest.
Yeah, maybe a guest. Evan, I think, is probably still able to get there. It's not quite tax season yet.
It is tax season.
Oh, is it?
He's knee deep already.
Oh,
I spoke to him.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. And Kara is like surrounded by LA fires.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
That's
so
crazy.
she's dodgy for doing the show tonight because she might have to literally
dodge.
evacuate.
Yeah.
It's
pretty wild if you guys have seen it. Like within the span of 30 minutes or something like that, it was a blaze.
Well, it's because of a combination of fire and wind.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a bad combination.
And dryness.
And combustible stuff.
Yeah, that's the... Got to rake those forests. Anyway,
yeah.
Sorry. Okay, I think that's it for today. We'll see you at least Friday, maybe.
See you next time.
Week. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ian.
No problem. And that's green.
Yeah, rep.